Hi, welcome again to Roxonniaspeaks, and today we'll be talking about preparing for recruitment agency interviews. Yes, a lot of persons want the opportunity to go away and they are called in for an interview. What are some of the questions that the agency or the employer normally asks? We're going to be going through those today. But before I go any further, I have to take the time out to big up my vocal squad. And for my new subscribers, thank you for subscribing. Thank you so much. And guys, continue to keep the comments coming in. Right? So as I said to you, we're going to be talking about how it is that I get ready for my interview. And I have done some discussions with persons who have already passed through this phase. Now, what are some of the things that they talk about in the interview? Of course, first of all, let me say, every agency, they have their processes. So it's different. So you might not get the same process with this agency that you get with another agency. It might be a lengthier process. They might ask for more things. But we're just going to be talking about what the general things that most of these agencies will ask you for and ask you in an interview. Now, again, some agencies may ask you to do one interview. Some may ask you to do 3 interviews. So you do a screening interview first, and then you do, after you're shortlisted, you do another interview, and then a final interview now as a matter of acceptance. So for the first interview, it is usually really a screening process. So they might ask you to submit all your relevant documents. You would have done an application form, and they ask you to submit information, of course, like your resume. So in going to into a regular job, they're going to ask you for a cover letter and a resume. For the agencies, they just ask you for your resume, and of course you'll complete the application form, which they would get additional information. Now, when you're called for the interview may take different format. Remember, the agencies locally are recruiting for the employers overseas. So what may happen is that the agencies locally may do their own interviews, because as again, some agency do their thing different from others. So the employer overseas might ask the agency locally to control the interview process, while some agencies and some overseas employer may intervene in the process. So for an agency that will require 3 or 2 interviews, at the latter part of the interview or the second interview, the overseas employer may step in to do that interview. So let us go to the application. So step 1, they submit an application. They might ask you for various things. Of course, your contact information. They'll ask you about your qualification. They'll ask you about your experience and so forth. That usually set the pace for an agency or a recruiter to shortlist you. So if you have been shortlisted, the assessment is done of the resume, and they believe that you're a good candidate, then they might ask you for a second interview. Now, this second interview will then ask you for documentation. For the agencies, usually, once you've passed the shortlisting stage, they'll ask you now to pay a processing fee, right? And the processing fee or registration fee, which is about, some people have 200 US as their registration fee. Which is of course non-refundable. Now they'll ask you to send your passport information and your copies of your qualification, your certificates, your diploma, whatever it is, possible driver's license and so forth. And of course they're going to ask for your references. They will not ask at this time for the police record until they are certain they are taking you on. So they are going to ask you to provide references, which they would call, of course, to confirm the information that you would have placed in your application form. Now, the important part of it, let us talk about what it is. What are some of the questions that they usually ask? So as I said, in general interview, they ask you about yourself. Tell me about yourself, right? What type of person you are? What are some of the traits that you have that would be necessary for the job that you're applying for? You know, then usually ask, why should you get the job? You know, why should they employ you? What are you bringing to the table? And you tell them what it is that you're bringing to the table. You have your skills and so forth, and maybe you're passionate about what you're doing, and so you can say those. They might ask you for some skills. What are some of your skill set? Do you have soft skills? Soft skills, you're a people person, right? People can, you're a team player, that sort of thing, right? And of course, the most important, your experience in the field. And usually in this section, if it's a second interview or a third interview, they will probably ask you some technical questions. So if you are applying for, say, a healthcare work or something in the nursing field, they might ask you some questions. What is it that you would call? What is the rate for the normal blood pressure? In a normal range, give me a normal range for normal blood pressure. They might ask, what is the rate for mild blood pressure? Because these are some of the basic things that you'll take from a patient, right? Their vitals. They might ask you, how is it that you dress somebody who has a wound, maybe a burn or so? And they might ask you, how do you lift someone if they have a injury in the back? You know, probably technical questions like those. So of course they're going to ask you questions about what you would have placed on your resume. So when they ask you about your previous job and your experience, and you tell them what it is that you do on the resume, they're going to ask you now face to face, either face to face, as I said, or probably over Zoom or one of those platforms virtually, to explain to them how it is done, because they want to ensure that whoever resume, whatever it is that you put on it, matches your experience, although you can study it. And remember, afterwards, once you get through, they'll normally train you. And so they might ask some culinary questions if you're a chef. So for example, they might ask you about the mother sauces, right? And you know, they might ask you about pastas, types of lettuce, types of soup. They may get a little technical based on what they're looking for. So you have to ensure that you put the correct information there, right? Because they will definitely ask you, and they will ask whoever you provide as references as well. As I said, for the interview, of course, you're going to ask general interview questions. So whether you're going on an overseas program, or you're looking at job locally, any job opportunity locally, they will ask you some basic questions or general questions, and then outside of that, they'll ask you specifically about the job and about you traveling. Of course, one thing that you should also ensure that you do is to have your passport current, because processes are different for everybody depending on the season. And when you apply, they might want somebody urgent, and if your passport is expired, yes, I know you can do a emergency passport, but to just ensure that everything is ready, so that once opportunity comes, you can always jump on it, right? Because you are going into a different environment, right? They will ask you questions pertaining to that environment. It's a different culture altogether. So they might ask you about that. How do you manage culture shock? Especially if you go up in the winter, the place is cold, you're from a tropical island. How do you manage that, or how do you plan to manage? Have you thought about it? Living overseas for over in excess between 3 to 9 months or so. You know, have you thought about that? They will probably ask you as well, what are your goals for the time that you're over there in the USA? Please do not tell the people them say you're going because you want to earn some US dollars. They want to know that you're learning from their culture so that you can come back to Jamaica and apply it locally. So you're going to learn. Yes, you're going to work, but the aim is that you are learning from their culture to apply to your culture and to improve you as a person, improve your skills and that sort of thing. So you learn how to prepare things differently. We might do it one way in Jamaica, they might do it another way over there. So things like that they want to hear. So ensure that all of those things are in place. So guys, that is it. If you have any questions, don't forget to put them in the comment section below. Please like and share this video with your family and friends. Tell a friend to tell another friend.